Hello, my name's Christine and these are my Mindful Meanderings. I've had a pretty crazy week, to be honest. Emotionally up and down and a bit all over the place, but generally at the moment I'm pretty good. I'm still working my way through Louise Hay's book called You Can Heal Your Life, and it's really been quite an interesting journey for me. In particular, I've noticed that sometimes I create these experiences for myself and I don't think they're necessarily all that healthy. So that was a really interesting reflection for me. I found that there are some things that have happened which, now that I'm looking at it, I'm questioning why on earth I was projecting such a negative outlook onto things. And I'll use an example in the house sitting space. This is largely my world at the moment, and this is how we live. We're trying to get ourselves back into a more stable position financially after what happened with our property. And so the house sitting has been quite rewarding in that sense, and it's enabled us to save a lot more money. There's a hell of a lot of sacrifices that we've had to make though. If we were working for organisations that required us to go into an office, this would be so much harder. So in saying that, I'm incredibly grateful that both my husband and I are able to work remotely, because it has opened the door for us to save our bacon and be able to move around and travel as we need to, so that we can actually help people out with house sitting options that they have available. And anyway, what I was getting to is I've noticed, like, every now and again I'm nitpicking about things which are really quite inconsequential and quite pathetic, and I'm kind of reflecting and thinking to myself, why am I doing that? This property that I'm looking after at the moment, it is gorgeous, the dogs are really well behaved, and yes, there have been some inconveniences as a consequence of taking on this responsibility, but I found for a few days there that my energy was low, and I found myself nitpicking at things which ordinarily are just like everyday things. And so I'm going to take stock of that and acknowledge that that was where I was at. And I also want to be more present in my thought process, because honestly, how is that serving me? I often, particularly if I'm in a bit of a downward spiral with my thought processes, this is one of those questions I find really powerful, because we have emotions, and yes, we are emotional beings and we should be able to express those emotions, and I'm not trying to discredit that, but when we're on a downward spiral and it just keeps going and going and going, I find, for me anyway, it's a really good time to take a step back and ask the question, well, how is this serving me? That largely came about because after I separated from my ex, I just found myself wallowing. I was really sad and grieving, and that's not to say I shouldn't be grieving, but when it goes on for so long that it's affecting your life and your work and the people around you, you need to start, I suppose, being more aware of how you're showing up in the world. So this isn't a bash session or anything like that. I just wanted to give you a little tool that I found helped me, and really and truly, it's about awareness, because awareness is the key to change. And if we're not aware of our thoughts, our words, our deeds, our actions, and our interactions, how can we ever get better? I personally enjoy doing personal development. I know some people think that I can be a bit hardcore sometimes in that space. Admittedly, I haven't actually done a huge amount of personal development in a while, and as I'm saying this, I'm realizing that I'm reading a book which is called How to Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, and many people would look at that and go, well, that's personal development. And yes, it is, but the type of personal development I was doing compared to what I'm doing now are things like I'd listen to Tony Robbins, I would listen to Jim Rohn for an hour every day. And so comparatively, me reading Louise Hay from time to time, and I haven't really listened to a huge amount in the personal development space for some time, compared to where I was, compared to now, I don't do that much. So that's just a personal reflection. It's not a judgment, it's just an observation. And maybe it's a good reflection in that I could do a bit more personal development, just to lift my game a bit, raise my vibration, and really invite more of the things that I enjoy into my world, because the reality is that your vibe attracts your tribe. And if you're a sorry, sad, boring kind of person who watches telly, no offense, that's just not my bag, then you're going to attract those type of people. And if your life is all drama, maybe it's time to look inside and say to yourself, okay, is this the type of environment or the type of energy or the type of people, or the type of experiences I want in my world. Because if it's not, then I encourage you to maybe do something different. I'm not going to tell you what that something different is. For me, I really, really enjoy personal development. I like how it makes me feel. I like the type of people that are attracted to it. And I feel like the vibration gets lifted up when I'm engaged in those type of things. Now, I totally respect that you need to stay motivated, and many times, especially if you go to one of these rah-rah events, people will get motivated at the event and then they go home and a few days later the motivation kind of dwindles because they don't have the energy lifting them up, which was largely why I chose to continue to listen to personal development well after the events, because it would just keep reminding me that I need to motivate myself. Motivation will always trump inspiration every day of the week. Not to say that being inspired isn't a good thing. I think inspiration is amazing, but unless you're motivated, you can have all the inspiration in the world, you're never going to do anything with it. So that's a little bit about my learnings from the last week or so's thought processing. And I just want to encourage you that we all have challenges. If you're really, really struggling, by all means reach out and speak with someone who is able to help you, or pick up a book or listen to an audio that is in line with what you need to move the needle. Because sitting there and wallowing in self-pity or continuing to invite more of that negative energy into your space is just going to continue to drag you down. And believe you me, I've been on one of those negative spirals. It wasn't friendly. And who wants to be depressed anyway? I mean, neurologically speaking, and I know this is a bit more sciencey, but we can get addicted to these type of feelings and behaviors, and the chemicals that are let off in your brain when you're depressed become habitual, and so you become an addict to those hormones and those emotions. So unless you take stock of those emotions and the hormones and the neurological chemicals that are being injected into your brain, and you go, okay, well, as of today, I'm going to start being more aware of my thought processes and acknowledge that this is an addiction, and just like any crack addict, I need to make changes, and sometimes it's going to be freaking hard. It is, I'm telling you, I've been there. It is hard to break the addiction. So that's why it's super important that you do seek help if you've been going through something like that, because often we don't know what we don't know. And often we don't know what we need, but someone who has a bit more experience can guide us accordingly. Now, I personally have gone through so many modalities of healing over the last 10 years, I can barely even count them on both hands because there's just so many of them. And some of them were great and some of them were not so great. That doesn't mean they're not beneficial. I just didn't find them beneficial for me at that time for those purposes. And that's okay. I may come back around and try one of the ones that didn't work for me down the track, and it might be a totally different set of circumstances. But at the time, some of them were great, some of them were not great. You need to choose something that's going to work for you. Nobody can tell you what that is. For me, I find meditation is really good. I find hypnosis is really good. And sometimes just getting out into fresh air and going for a walk. Like really, really simple stuff. You do not need to spend a lot of money to make progress, but you do need to take steps every day, multiple times a day. And one of the things that I'm using right now, which is a Louise technique, which I encourage you to try out, is mirror work. I know that there are quite a few people out there who encourage mirror work. I think Louise was actually one of the very early people in this space, but it is incredibly powerful. And I think about the first time I did mirror work, and that was hard. I could barely speak the words that I love you and I appreciate you and you are worthy and you are enough. And I was just bawling because that's not how I felt. And to tell myself, my inner child, that I am enough, that I am worthy and I'm deserving of love, at the time that was hard. And by no means am I perfect. There are some days where it's not that easy, but I tell you what, compared to that day, it is so much easier. So you need to be persistent. You need to keep giving it a crack. Anyway, that's all I'm going to share with you on this one. I hope that you found value in this sharing, and if you do like it, please would you share it with people that you love and trust and maybe need to hear the message. I wish you all the very best in your day and hope that you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to sharing with you again sometime soon. Until next time, take care.